This interview is conducted for the Jewish Holocaust Center of Melbourne on the 26th of January 1993. Eva Orbach interviewing Leon Jedwab of Turek. Thank you, Leon, for agreeing to be interviewed. I know it's not an easy thing to do. The main focus of this interview will be on the war years. But could we start with some background information about yourself and your family? Right?
Yes.
When were you born?
In October 1923.
Mm-hmm. And where exactly were you born?
In Zagorov, a small town on the river Varta. It was near Konin, and also near Kalisz.
Good. Where did your mother's and father's families come from?
My father was born in Kalisz, and my mother is born in Zagorov.
And could you describe your extended family, uncles and aunts?
There were too numerous to remember to mention them
yes,
all.
Yes.
I had a very big family, and my mother, from my mother's side, and also from my father's side.
Did they live in Zagorov?
Mostly from my mother's side, because my father came after the First World War from Kalisz. When the war was in the First World War in Kalisz, he came to Zagorov, and that's where our family started.
And your father's family lived in Kalisz?
In Kalisz, yes.
So were you in contact? You must have been. It's a small town. You must have.
Oh
a lot
yes,
of contact
it's a
with,
very.
with cousins.
Oh yes, a small town, and we had many cousins and relations.
Yes, yes, extended family. Could you give me your mother's and father's full names?
My father was Ida Chaim Jedwab. My mother's a Shane Reisel, Burgerman.
Burgerman.
Burgerman, yes.
And how many siblings did you have, brothers and sisters?
We were 4 brothers and 1 sister.
And what did your father do for a living?
We had like a small department shop, store, with all materials and ready-made goods, shoes and all kind of things.
He had employees, I guess, in that case, did he?
On market days, when it was, we employed extra staff.
I see.
Otherwise, my mother and sister and my father, and also the grown-up brothers were helping in the shop while.
I see. I see. On ordinary days. Did he employ any non-Jews, or were his employees Jews?
There were none such things as non-Jews that worked in the shops. No, because it was more like a family affair. And the employees even that we employed were also from family, like cousins and
relations. Yes, I see. How would you describe your life at that time? Was it affluent, middle class?
It was our family. We were not quite well off to compare with other people.
You were quite well off.
Yes. And my father, he was very respected in town, and also from the religious point of view, he was a religious man, also not very Hasidic, but very religious and honest. And in our yard was also a Hasidic Gerer Stiebel, although it was in our backyard, but my father still went to the synagogue.
Not to the Stiebel.
Not to the Stiebel.
But yard means that you lived in a large block. Yes?
It was a double-story house.
Double-story.
House which was ours.
Oh, yes.
And a big backyard it was.
Oh, no other people living there?
No other people lived there.
I see, just the Stiebel in the backyard. Yes, I see. And what sort of school did you attend?
The schooling unfortunately, being a small town was like 7 grades we started. We finished up about 12. But after, when the war broke out, I had private teachers, which I learned like first year gymnasium, what we call.
Yes.
And but I also studied with rabbis like in like a small yeshiva in Zagorov, which we had rabbis, and we went to classes every day and so forth.
A group of
yes,
children together. Yes, yes. And the school you attended, the primary school, was that Jewish or
was
secular?
all Jewish.
All Jewish.
Jewish, because unfortunately in our town the anti-Semitism in the later years, late 29 and 30s, were very bad, anti-Semitic.
Yes. Yes.
We had one of the Catholic priests which preached every Sunday in the church anti-Semitic remarks and against the Jews, and not to go to the Jewish shops, and not to support the Jewish shop. There were pickets sometimes in front of the Jewish shops.
Was that on a regular basis or just occasionally?
Almost in the later years,
yes.
In 36 and 37. And in 36 we had the big pogrom also, which was, if not the police army arrived from the Konin, from the next big town, there would have been a lot of casualties. And that and that was one of the reasons that my father started to think about immigrating, and we had cousins in Australia, and we received permits to come to Australia already then.
I see, yes. Well, we'll come to that again later on, okay? You had older brothers, didn't you?
Yes.
Were they able to finish their education? Did they go to a
No, it was the same.
school?
No, it was the same kind.
They didn't go to another town?
They couldn't go to another town. It was very hard to accept Jewish students.
Yes, yes. What language or languages were spoken in your home?
At home, mostly Yiddish. Mostly Yiddish, but also Polish in the schools and everywhere with other people.
Were your parents fluent in Polish?
Yes.
Any other languages? No.
German, because there was a large population of Volksdeutsche living around there. And so German was spoken with a lot of customers and people that lived around there as well.
So some non-Jewish people did come to buy in your shops when it was not picketed?
Yes. Sometimes in the bad years in 36, 37, they came through the back door, which they still like to come to our shop and to buy.
Yes. So you had this contact in the shop, or your family did, with non-Jews. Did you have any other contact with non-Jews?
Our teachers were non-Jewish.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Most of them, yes. But the majority were Jewish. And the contact, we were not accepted.
No.
I didn't have any Polish friends because whenever we started to go out in the street or want to get to their places, they were throwing stones at us and chasing us away.
Was it a very small town, but was it a Jewish area where Jews actually lived?
Yes, they were congregated mostly around the big marketplace because that's where all the shops were. So they're mostly shopkeepers and the tailors and shoemakers, and that's where they mostly live.
You mentioned that your father was active in the community. Did he belong to some organization?
Yes, he was in the Gimilis Chasodim Kasse. We used to call that that was like for helping out poor people, giving them loans on no interest and so forth.
Like a
And
Jewish welfare.
welfare, yes. And also he was active in the synagogue. He was a reader of the Torah every Shabbat. And also many times he was taking the place of the cantor.
Oh, yes. Did he have a good voice?
He had a very beautiful voice,
Yes. And you yourself, did you belong to any organization?
I was
You
a
were
bit too young,
young,
but in the youth we started, there was a Bnei Akiva, and also later was a Beitar, that we started some Zionist activities.
Yes. You were, and your older brothers also?
Yes,
They were
yes.
involved. Do you remember any collection boxes in your home, like a
Yes,
box? Or
yes. There were always Meyer Balnes,
what's
the
that?
box, Meyer Balnes. This was for a yeshiva
Oh, yes.
in Israel.
Oh.
Yes, it was a charity box.
Oh.
And at a later stage, we started already the Zionist, and there was the blue box coming in.
Yes. How many Jews were in your town, and what proportion of the population was it before the war?
I don't know exactly,
No.
but it was approximately, by the records, what they say, it was about 650 Jews.
Out of the population of?
Out of the population, I would say maybe around 3,000-4,000.
Yes. How long had Jews been living in Zagorov?
In Zagorov. When I was in Israel on my last trip, I went to the Bet Hatzafot. Yes, and there I found quite some information. Can you stop? You want me to come back now?
Just
here.
towards the end.
Yeah, towards the end, yes.
But wait a minute. Oh, my arm, I'm sorry.
Not this bad. Good. Okay, you want to say something about it?
Just wait 1 minute.
Just one.
He has to say 4 or something.
4, this one. You wanted when the Jewish started, yes.
Yes.
In the 19th century, and then, in 1882. Yeah, okay.
What is it? Okay.
The first record of Jewish people go back to 1882, when the first synagogue was built in Zagorov. And a lot of people were traders and peddlers, and also in agricultural products. A lot of them included tailors, shoemakers, carpenters, blacksmith, tanners, and also some owned flour mills, and also blanket weaving. And this existed peacefully till about 1930, when the livelihood of the Jews, anti-Semitism erupted into riots in 1936.
You can probably talk about this from your own experience.
Yes. I still remember the day when this was the 5th of February 1936, when a big riot started in the marketplaces, and they started to knock all the Jewish windows out. And I remember we had to let the shutters down in the shop, and they tried to break through, but they couldn't come into the shop because they wanted to plunder. And at this time, the police arrived from the next town. And
where were you?
I was in the shop.
How were you?
I was in the shop.
Was the shop in the house that you lived in?
Yes, the shop was in the house. Yes. It was like we lived behind the shop in this.
You were then quite young, or
Yes,
young teenager.
I was 13 years
13.
old.
Must have been very frightening.
Yeah, it was terribly frightening.
Yes,
We thought that this the end
Yes.
is for us all.
yes. Do you know what set this off?
Actually, I don't remember
No.
exactly,
No.
but it was mainly because of this anti-Semitism that started to
From the
form an
church.
organization, and also they were called the Index. I don't know the meaning of it still till now. They wore an emblem like a sword with a snake around them. And they were actually, their aim was to chase the Jews out of Poland.
So they were pro-Nazi.
Yes, right.
Was it a Nazi? Was it a Nazi?
It wasn't
German
actually a
influence?
Nazi. No, nothing to do with the Nazi
No.
influence. No,
Just
this
they
was
did it all on their own.
Yes.
Yes. And would that have involved a lot of Volksdeutsche or not necessarily?
No,
No.
no. I would say that the Volksdeutsche at this time didn't have a
Participate?
hand
No.
in that.
No. So that started. That was in '36.
And that was in
And
36.
after that, things quietened down again.
It quietened down, not quite, but with a lot of anti-Semitism. Still, it didn't actually quieten down. It got more and more till the war came
Yes,
here.
yes.
And some of the Poles and those people that supported the anti-Semitic organization were quite happy in a way that the Germans arrived and
Did the job for them.
did the job for them.
Yes. What did you know about Hitler and his rise to power in Germany before the war?
We heard in the beginning, and a lot of people said, oh, we haven't got very much to fear about that because in the First World War wasn't so bad and people survived. And there were opportunities and people could run away, but they didn't run away because, like our family, they were quite well off. And to go to new places was a bit strange, and we didn't know what was coming, what to expect.
Yes, but the German situation was discussed in your home.
Yes, we were talking about it, and of course this was one of the reasons that my father, although we all had permits to come to Australia, the whole family.
You already had the permits?
Yes, we had permits sent by our uncle, by our cousin, what lived in Australia, but because we were established and we were well off, my father postponed it all the time, and my father didn't want to burn the bridges, so he wanted to take my two elder brothers to Australia and to see if he can settle there and then bring the rest of the family out.
Yes, yes.
And this was he left Australia in 37, Poland in 37, in 38, and arrived here in early 39. And of course the war broke out.
It was too late.
And it was too late.
Yes.
And my father, a matter of fact, he wanted to leave my two brothers here and come back to Poland. But in the shipping company there was a Mr. Plotkin, and he said, Mr. Jedwab, I'm not going to give you any papers, you're not going back to Poland. Things are too dangerous over there.
Yes, yes.
And he was right, and of course in September the war broke out.
Yes. Your town was near the German border, so you must have been aware of Zbonjin, of the Jews being expelled from Germany?
Yes, because the moment we heard about the Jews being expelled from Germany to Zbonjin, they were on the border near Poznan, from the border from Germany. And a matter of fact, later on, when they started to bring all the Jews from all the neighboring towns into our town and made like an open ghetto.
Yeah, that was during the war.
During the war. And they also brought a lot of those Jews from Zbonchin to our
I
town.
see, right, yes. I suppose through them you would have heard even more of what was going on in Germany.
Yeah, we knew already, but it was already too late
To do anything about
to
it.
do anything about it.
Yes. Well, we would come now to the outbreak of the war, unless there's something else you would like to say from the period before the war?
Not really,
No.
no, there is
No.
nothing.
Mm. Well, can you tell me what you remember about the day that Poland was invaded? World War II was declared?
Yes, when the war was declared, of
September?
course, all of us, after the news that we heard what was happening with the German Jews and expelling, we knew that it's not going to be very nice and easy for us.
Mm.
But we still hoped that it wouldn't come to such a degree as we expected later on.
Mm.
First of all, they came in on the Erev Rosh Hashanah in 1939 into our town.
What date was that?
That was the 23rd of Wrzesień, that is September.
I see. Mm. But only about 2 weeks after the
That's
outbreak of the war.
it was so close to
Yeah,
the
to
border,
German
to German border, that the first patrol came into this year.
Do you remember?
I remember exactly, I remember the motorcycles, how they came in, and the cars of them. And they went right away to the Bürgermeister, to somebody, a German, which he was later the Bürgermeister of they made them, and they, Volksdeutscher, and they even had ammunition there hidden in the German church, that they knew already, they had spies and they knew everything exactly what was happening, what's going on.
Yeah. So what happened to you and your family?
And as they came in on the second day, this was on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, they asked all the Jews to assemble in the marketplace, which was like a cobblestones. And among the cobblestones was grass growing, like weeds, grass and all that. That everybody's got to bring a spoon and a knife with them. And they put us down in the marketplace to pull the weeds out and clean up. And they were also grabbing different people to do any other jobs around the town, to cleaning up.
Straight away on
Straight away on the Rosh Hashanah.
Had you been in the synagogue? Had people been in the synagogue? Or?
Yes, people were, but on the first day, of course, when this all, we couldn't have gone to the synagogue.
No.
On the second day, we went to the synagogue, but I stayed home, and this was in the Stiebel, that was, I mentioned before,
yes,
in the
backyard,
backyard, which was the Hasidic Gerer Stiebel. They came in there, and they took the Sefer Torahs out, and they stepped on them, walked along of the Sefer Torahs, and they took some of the elderly Jewish people that were praying there in their talisim, and put them against the wall with the hands up, and they said to them, ihr Juden sagt ihr letzten Gebet, that means say your last prayers because you're going to be shot. And of course they started to cry with screams and saying the Vidya, this is the last prayer that is said before you die. But then they started to laugh, and they said, ihr habt gut gebeten.
You prayed well.
You prayed well, so that you are saved. And this was just traumatic. You can imagine what it was.
Did you actually see it?
I saw it myself.
Where you were?
Yeah.
Yes. And did anything happen to you at this stage?
No,
No.
not at this stage. I was taken out. Then they started to come every day to different houses and grabbing out anybody, able person or even sick people, and took them out to do manual work around the town.
You were, I'm trying to think of it, you were 16?
13 years
13,
old. 13 years.
No,
And
you must have been a bit older. In 1939.
39. I'm sorry, 15 years. 15
yes.
years, not quite 16 years.
Yes.
15 years old. And there came out a law that we have to wear the yellow star with the U there on right away, and in every window where a Jew lived, or every shop, we had to put the card on Jude written on it.
Were the shops still open?
Yes, they were coming, but one day a lot of the lorries rolled up to all the shops, and they asked the people, the owners from the shop, to load up all the goods into the autos, and they took everything away.
Was there any attempted resistance?
No, the fright was too great,
Yes.
and they were walking around with their guns pointed at, and there was no organized resistance at all.
Or did anybody try to run away?
There were certain people that ran away on bicycles, like to next town, and some of them did manage to escape to other towns which finally finished up in Russia, the travel.
Yes.
But I, matter of fact, already planned with somebody, another friend of mine, to do the same. But because of my mother being there, I didn't want to leave her.
Yes. Were you the oldest by then, or because?
Then I was the oldest one. I had still a younger brother, but an elder sister as well.
Elder sister, yes, I see.
And also another thing, when they started to clean out from the shops, they came in also to our house where we lived. This was on the next day, and the chief from the gendarmerie said from the police.
Oh, it's a Pole.
No, that was a German already established there. That we have to leave the house within 1 hour. And with him came also German women that said to the police, I like this piece of furniture, and I like this piece of furniture, and he took out a ticket and put it on that this is not allowed to be moved. Among those people was one German woman that used to come on Shabbat to light the fire for us. Shabbos, and she came into the bedroom. It was a beautiful bedroom, so she said, they slept long enough in those beds, now is my time to sleep in it. And she said she wants those beds.
Yes. And you had to, can I just go back for a minute, when you had to, on the first day, when you had to dig out the wheels?
Yes.
Was this old and young and children,
everybody?
Everybody. And was that done with cruelty, with beating and so on? Or?
Yes, there were also, if somebody said that they were sick or something like that, or said, oh, you're not sick, you are lazy, and things like that.
Must have been that was your first, really, the first thing that happened?
The first,
must have been a
on the show, of course, this was the first introduction into the German culture.
What was the reaction? How did people respond?
I mean, that was, everybody was terribly realized what we are in for right away.
Yes.
A few
that
days
was the idea, I guess.
Yeah, a few days later, we saw a great big fire happening in the town, middle of the town. So we ran out. Usually we had the sirens going from the fire brigade. Usually when a fire in a small town, everybody ran out
Yes, to see.
and to help or to see what's happening and things. As we wanted to get out of our house, the police was there already with the army, and they didn't let us, they pushed us back into the houses. And we realized that this was our beautiful synagogue burning.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine that lived just across the road, he observed and watched the whole procedure, how it was. They broke down the big doors and they went up to the Oren Kodesh where the Torahs were kept, and they started to light it. But they took about 5 or 6 attempts to light it, and it didn't somehow catch fire. Then they assembled all the seats onto the benemer that is on the bima, and they started to light that, and also didn't burn, but because there was no draft.
I see.
Then they went outside, they broke all the windows and threw grenades into it, and that's how it burned. And on the next day it burned till about 12 o'clock on the next day. And all that it was left just the very thick walls. It was a very solid big building. And they took us, all the young people, and also not so young, to start to demolish the walls. And that took months and months of work by hand, with a hammer and a chisel. Small hammer and a chisel, so you can imagine how long it took to demolish. But they wanted just to have the satisfaction to make the Jews work and in such meaning work.
Yeah.
And they also burned down, demolished the Bet HaMedrash, which was also with a lot of holy books were there. And a lot of the books were taken out from there and were given out to the shopkeepers because there was a shortage in paper. And one day I went in to buy some vegetables, and I had a look at what's called the Gemurah. That my name was written on it.
Yes.
And that reminded me that was the same place where I used to learn with the rabbi.
With the rabbi, yes.
And now they wrapping for vegetables.
Yes. How was that? This was, of course, not a Jewish shop.
No, not a Jewish shop.
So how was the relationship? What was the response of the non-Jewish community to all this?
Of course, there was no protest coming from anybody, not from the church, not from anybody.
No.
As I said before, that there were a lot of anti-Semitism was there before, and this was a very easy place for the Germans to get into it.
Yes.
Not like Holland or other countries that were resistant from the locals.
Yes, yes. Did they participate, the non-Jews, or did they just stand and watch?
They were in gloat. They were sitting, watching and gloating of all this and laughing at us.
Yes. But you mentioned you went to buy vegetables, so you were still able to go?
Yes, we were, as we had a shop, we managed to hide a few pieces of material here and there from the shop.
Yes.
And slowly we had a bit of money also,
yes.
And we were selling out things like jewelry, and that was kept us going.
But who bought it?
The Poles.
Poles. And used to come to you.
They used, yes, and we sold it to them, and that kept us going like that. And one day
And
they
I'm
also.
sorry, what I meant is you were able to go to a non-Jewish shop and
Yes,
buy.
yes, yes. The shops were still open. A matter of fact, there were still a few Jewish shops as well, which the farmers brought food shops. Yes.
Mm.
And one day they also came in and they were looking in our home and said to my mother that you have hidden some materials and things like that. And they, the Germans,
yes.
and they made a search,
yes.
but they couldn't find anything. And so they arrested my mother. And this was the first time, and it was an enormous trauma that my mother was sitting in a jail overnight.
Yes.
And we heard about stories like that from the neighboring town. They were taken away for a night, and next morning they were taken away somewhere. And they said they're going to a camp, to a labor camp.
Yes.
But a few days after, there came a notification that they died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And we knew what it was all about.
Of course.
But we ran around like, to say, in great panic. For German, matter of fact, the Bürgermeister was a person that knew us very well before the war, and we were on good terms with him. And he had a hand, of course, we gave him plenty of jewelry and things like that, and they released my mother.
Yes. Had she been mistreated in jail?
No, this was a jail, a very small jail next to the police station, lockup, where they kept drunks and thieves and things like that.
Yes.
And you can imagine my mother being together with them.
Do you know about how old she was at this time? Can you work in her 40s?
Yes, she would be. I'll remember later. I just can't.
Yeah, all right.
Yes,
Doesn't matter.
yes, in the 40s.
Yes. Well, sorry. Was your shop actually taken over by Germans, or was it just closed down?
It was emptied from all the material we had and closed down.
Yeah.
We managed to save a few pieces,
yes.
and we had to. And people came when they came in and told us later also to move out of our house.
Yes.
They came us and to help us, and we were lucky to move in to a house that had 2 bedrooms, because they started to bring the people from the other towns. And although we didn't complain, they said that our town is going to be liquidated, and we were very frightened of that, of course. But they said next day that it's not going to be liquidated, but they're going to bring more people into it, and we'll have to accommodate them.
Yes, yes.
And
what time are we up to now? Would you know?
This was early 40.
Early 40. Yes.
Early 40.
Yes.
And
can I just ask one other thing?
Yeah.
You had a younger brother and sister.
Yes.
Were they of school age still?
No, my younger brother, he was 13 years old. My elder sister was...
oh, you didn't have a younger sister? I'm sorry, the sister
No,
was older.
no.
Yes, I'm
my
sorry.
elder sister was the oldest one from our children.
Yes. Now, I was wondering whether Jewish schools were closed down straight away, or whether they continued.
Oh yes, this was closed down straight away.
What happened to the stiebel in your backyard?
The stiebel, they destroyed it, all the books. They burned all the books, and they made a big fire, and they burned all the books, and it stayed like dilapidated.
Yeah.
And one instance I also remember, where we went to live, in that special house where they moved us out of our home, there was also a family, what they came from Zbonshing. It was a Rabbi Ansel Sheiman. Moshe Ansel Sheyman, and also his brother, also a rabbi.
Yes.
And
Where did they come from?
they come from, I don't know exactly, but he was a rabbi in Germany.
In Germany, yes. Yes.
And
of Polish birth.
Polish birth.
Yes.
And he was from that town, actually, and he came back to that town like that.
From your town or the town?
Yeah, from our town, this
see.
Moshe Ansel Sheyman.
Yes.
And the brother died, and just a week after, one brother died, brother that lived with us,
yes.
and the other rabbi also lived together. They were such nice people that were really glad to have them with us.
Yes.
That I still remember going to the funeral of this Rabbi Sheyman.
But both brothers died?
One brother died first.
Yes.
A week after the other one died. But on the first brother's funeral, the other brother still had officiated in the eulogy on him.
Well,
and
they died of natural causes, did they?
Yes, and he died a week after him, and the whole town was so moved, and they said it's a real curse from God that such two holy people could have died within such a short time
and were you
of natural death.
Sorry, yes. Were you able to have a funeral?
Yes, they still allowed us to have this funeral, but as later we realized later that this was a blessing in disguise, that they were able to have still, like we say, a kever yisroel, to have a proper Jewish value, not like the others.
Yes. Now, you told me before that you were not in the ghetto, so can you just, sorry, I have to find where we go on to. Can you just tell me what happened to you after that?
They started to, later on, when all this working group started, so they formed a Jewish committee, and they said to the Germans, listen, if you need any workers, don't just run around and grab anybody, but you say how many you want on this day, we will supply. And that's how it became a little bit easier.
Yes.
But after that...
How was this committee selected? Do you know that?
Just among the Jews themselves.
Were there people who had been active in the...
Yes, they were active in committees before from supported like the welfare societies and so forth.
Yes, so that's sort of like a Judenrat.
Yeah, a Judenrat.
Yes.
And not long after that, they said they're going to take out all the young people for work to move them away. And that was when I was moved in 1940 to Hohensalza, which is in Wrocław in Polish.
Oh, I see.
And
where was that?
This was in Poland, near Bydgoszcz, and we were starting to build railway tracks.
Yes.
And they also wanted to take my younger brother, and by bribing some Germans and things like that, we managed to leave them behind. We sent them to a village not far away, just for the day when they took the young ones out. So my brother stayed behind. I don't know, it was good. Maybe if he would have come with me,
might have been better. No way of knowing.
Maybe he would have survived.
He was young.
Yes.
And your sister and your mother?
Stayed behind in Zagorów.
And were they also working?
They were taking out, not so much, they didn't take so much the women out to work as they took the men, yes. And being later on in this camp in Wrocław, we heard this was a labor camp.
Yes.
It wasn't like a concentration
No.
camp. We were wearing ordinary working clothes, and we were able still to get mail and contact with the family at home.
Yes.
And I was also getting parcels sent from home.
From home. Were you enclosed with in a camp?
Yes, it was
wire?
enclosed with a wire,
Yes.
but not a barbed wire. It was a barbed wire, but it was not electrified, and there was no guards as such, but it was a camp leader, a German, like it was the SA, the Arbeitsgruppen, you know, it
Yes.
was they
SA,
were
SA.
SA,
Yeah, not SS.
SA, no, not SA, not the
And
SS,
how
but SA.
many approximately do you think? How many people were there? How many men?
I
You just
can't
say now.
exactly.
And
It
what were the
was-
living conditions like?
The living condition was we were giving a morning breakfast, and as we came home, we were giving a main meal. Of course, the sanitation was terrible, and I still remember having an infection on my finger, as you can still see it here,
Yes.
and there was no medical.
Can you point to it?
There were-
He has it on the screen now.
There were no medical facilities,
No.
but there was what we called the sanitariusz,
Yes.
and he just cut it with a knife to let the
Let the
pus out,
Yes.
and that's how
Left like this.
left like it is. And
And
still having,
were you in barracks with bunks?
yes, there were barracks and bunks, and but we were not too hungry.
No.
We were able to do.
Let's see what.
We were able to do different deals with people, like we were getting tobacco ration and swap it over for bread. And also a bit of marmalade. One didn't like marmalade, so the other one gave him a piece of bread and things like that.
But your main meal was.
The main meals wasn't too bad,
Wasn't too bad.
because we were doing very hard work,
Yes.
and this was not an extermination
No.
camp. There was no crematoriums there. There was nothing like
They
that.
wanted you
They
to
wanted
work.
just. They needed workers.
Yes.
They were building the railways to improve the railways, because they were already planning faster railways to the Russian front.
Yes.
And when I was still getting letters from home, my mother also sent me ration cards for bread. And this I could still manage to swap them over
Yes.
in shops to get bread, because you
Yes.
couldn't buy without the ration cards. One day when we were working near the city, on the way in, I could see a baker shop. So I said, instead of giving somebody else to bring me the bread and pay him something in bread for it, so I went myself. As I was in the shop, I was afraid that he recognized me being a Jew. I held my head down, and he bent down like that and looked at me, and he said, "You are a Jew. How come that you've got ration cards? And you are probably from the camp around here." And I went white in my face and
Yes,
started to shake, because I knew what is going to become if he hands me
Yes.
over to the Gestapo.
Yes.
And he said, "Don't be afraid. I am a German, also from an occupied country where the Germans put me here. And I have to stay here because they put me. And as I'm a very heavy smoker, I need some tobacco, which I can't get. If you can bring me tobacco from the camp,
Yes.
I will give you bread for it." And I made a deal with him.
Yes.
For one packet of tobacco, he gave me 2 breads. and I bought it from the camp, from other people for one bread. So I made a profit on it, and that kept me going more.
Yes.
One day I was caught by the Hitler Jugend. NSA was taking me to the Gestapo.
How many of them?
Oh, there were about 6 or 7.
Really?
NSA were taking me to the Gestapo. I managed to run into a great big housing estate.
Yes.
And I ran up about 5 stories up in the attic. And first of all, I wanted to get rid of all evidence that I had with me, not to have to, if they catch me, not to put anybody else in instead. As I left it there, on the way down, there were a couple, because there were 2 exits, some were divided up. So there were 2 of them, and I fought them off, and I managed to knock them down.
Yes.
And I ran down into the yard and jumped over a small building. And as I landed in the other backyard, I realized it was the police station.
Oh no.
But I calmly walked down as if somebody, a worker or something like this, and I just walked out the gate and walked back to the work group a long way, and I came home. And then Chaim, which was, I mentioned, he was my future brother-in-law, said, "That's the end, Leon, you're not going anymore." No. But after a couple of months, we were still getting hungry and more, and as we were, I started again.
Took the risk again.
I took the risk again, and I walked out early along the railway track, because there was no cars along there. And I managed to go up to the same place where I left the ration cards.
How did you? Into the house?
Into the house, and I got it back, and I got anyhow.
The bread must have been stale by then.
Yeah, it didn't matter. It didn't
Sure.
matter. From there, they took us to Andreev, near Lodz.
Yes.
And
that was also, you wrote in 1942?
42, yes? That was already in 1942.
So you were quite a long time?
Quite a long time, yes. And they took us there, and we worked also on the railways. I was driving a small...
Was this also a labor camp?
A labor camp,
yes.
And also not quite as strict. It was stricter than the first one, but it was not a concentration camp. And from there...
It was a bigger place?
A bigger place, yes. Much bigger place. And from there, they started to take in 43 to Auschwitz-Birkenau.
I see, yes. But how were the conditions there at Andreev?
The conditions were worse. We were guarded more. We were more hungry. And it was much, much worse.
Did you have things like the Zählappell?
Yes, every morning we had the Zählappell, and they had to count if anybody escaped and things like that.
How far were you from where you had to work? A long walk?
Not very long, because the barracks were built around where the railways were in the forest, like, and from there we went either by truck or a railway wagon.
I see.
They took us, and they built. That's when they built those railway tracks to avoid Lodz, which was called Litzmannstadt, for the army to be quicker, not to have to go through, to go to the Russian front, and we could see.
Just to come back a minute, how were you moved from one place to the other?
By trucks.
Motor trucks.
Motor trucks, yes. And from there we were put on wagons, and that's where we came into Birkenau. That's when...
How long were you in Andreev?
Andreev till 43. From 42. From... I had it written, matter of fact.
Was it summer or winter? You remember?
It was summertime. It was summertime. Yes.
So mid-43.
Yes, mid-43. We were taken into Birkenau.
And how did you travel there?
But in the wagons, in the kettle wagons, those famous kettle wagons, which a lot of people died in there. We were there without water, without sanitation.
For how long?
A few days. I
Yes.
don't know exactly how long.
Yes.
And
Did you, sorry, I just
Yeah.
want to ask a bit more about Andreev. You said people were taken, you were not among the first to be taken?
not amount, no.
So what did you know of what
They
was...
gradually, we didn't know where we're going.
And you didn't know where these people were sent?
No.
Did you know anything else about what was
No,
going
we
on?
never knew anything about any we knew only, I didn't mention that before, when from the town, from our town, where they were taking. This was the first extermination in 1949, mass extermination of 1941.
Well, yes.
It was also a few days before Yom Kippur,
Yes.
like it was second day of Rosh Hashanah, that my mother, brother and sister were taken into tract, and they were taken into those Kashmir forests. They were guessed on the way in those hermetically closed trucks,
Yes.
and there were buried mass graves in those forests.
And you found that out when you were in Andreev? Or
No, we found that out already in the camp.
the first
One
camp?
of them went back to our town from the camp, from Wrocław,
Yes.
to our town by special bribing and things.
Yes.
He went back and he heard already the bad news that there is no hope. And we knew then that this started the mass
So you had a
extermination.
Yes, yes.
And with this thought, we lived already. We knew what is expecting us.
Yes,
And when
yes.
we saw trucks going and not coming, and coming back empty, we knew what it was. And from coming back to Birkenau, as I arrived, and all through the years, this wasn't easy to be able to stay with my brother, future brother-in-law, with
Brother-in-law.
Chaim, together.
It was not easy.
It wasn't very easy because they grabbed us different groups.
Yes.
But wherever he was or wherever I was, either he came with me or I came with him. And we managed, and that was like a morale booster for us to be together, to have somebody close.
He must have been quite a bit older than you.
Yes, he was older. And coming
Coming into Birkenau.
into Birkenau on the ramp was known Dr. Mengele, and started to separate people to the left and to the right.
But you were with a group of men, I presume, were you, or was it a mixed group in your
No,
in
men
your
separate, and there were only men.
on your train?
Only on our train was only
I
men,
see.
because the camp
They were
from
the camp.
Andreev
Yes,
was only men.
only men, right.
And as I was separated from Chaim,
He was sent to the other
he
side.
was sent to the other side, to the good side, the right side, and
Oh.
I was sent to the left, like to go to the crematorium.
But you didn't know, of course.
I didn't know at the
No.
time, but seeing Chaim on the other side, I managed to sneak around behind
The other side.
Mengele and go to the other side. And that's when we went into Birkenau, into the camp.
You must have been already, if he decided not to keep you for labor, you must have been already very emaciated or small? Or
Yes, I was very slim and things, and besides I was younger
Yes,
than Chaim. He was older,
yes.
so that's why they chose him to go there. And then they called out, according to the ABC, called out the names to come in, and that's when they started to tattoo the name before you came in. The moment we came in the camp, and they put the
number.
numbers.
Yes.
Please, could you hold
Okay,
on?
you want to
Saying
get
it.
it on there? 144768.
That's
Yes.
right.
This hasn't got any, some of them have a something
Yes,
in
no,
front or
this
behind.
was, it depends what time of
When
the
you came
year,
in.
what time, which year you came.
in, yes. So this was
And-
43.
And at the moment, right away before when they called out the names to go according, his name was Schreier,
Oh, yes.
starting with an S.
And you were J.
So I knew that we won't be able maybe to be together. So he changed his name because there were no documents, nothing. You could come in, just say any name, whatever
Yes.
you was. And he said his name was Jehochankevich, something with the J-E,
Yes.
the same as mine.
To be
And
close to
his
you.
number was,
Do you want to stop the camera?
144 769,
69.
just after
you.
me. And so we managed to stay together even in Birkenau.
That's very clever.
I mean, we were lucky not to send to working groups like to Auschwitz, which they have factories. This was next door, a few kilometers away.
Yes.
But we were in a caserne, in
Barrack?
barracks, with quarantines. Were called the quarantines.
Was there some reason for that?
They called it a quarantine. Oh, we'll show that after.
No, it's okay.
No. This was a picture I was taking. The quarantine barracks are still there now.
Yes.
I was there in '76, and I
Yes.
went up to the same place to be able to visit,
Yes.
and I wanted to have the satisfaction person to be able to walk in through the gates and
walk
to be
out
able to walk out again.
Yes. What does it
The
look
free
like
man.
in '76? What did it look like inside? All clean and tidy, or?
The barracks are not so, but they have a museum there,
Yes.
which they have quite extensive museum
exhibits.
exhibition.
Do you know why you were put in the?
Because for people that they plan to put in different camps to send out like to coal mines.
Oh yes.
And from there,
What were the conditions like there?
very, very bad.
Were they?
They were taking us out. We were not just moving rocks from one place to another, just to carry rocks, just to
Put you down.
put you down, like to break your spirit.
Yes.
And the food was terrible already, just the clear soup with a small piece of bread. This was the whole ration for a whole day.
And inside was the usual
Yes, the
Tiers
usual tiers of beds, just on on straw.
Yes.
And there's
Any blankets?
there was a single blanket, and just it was winter time already. Later on, it got cold, and we were giving just one pair of underpants with just a jacket and a pair of trousers.
Striped?
Striped, yes.
Yes.
There we were already striped,
And what about
and
shoes?
all the names, the shoes were wooden
Clogs.
clogs. And
I'm sorry, were your head shaved? Were you shaved? The head shaved?
yes, the heads were shaved, yes.
Yeah.
This was, they kept shaven because of lice in the
yes.
fumigation. We had to go with all the clothes and everything, the fumigation
Yes.
had to be done very often because they were afraid of typhoid and for themselves,
Yeah.
you know.
Did the fumigation take place? How was
The fumigation was only for the clothes.
Oh, you took your clothes off?
Clothes off, yes. We
Yes.
took the clothes off. And many times, even in the cold, it was already, we were standing naked just outside.
Outside.
There was already snow starting to fall, and we were standing naked and freezing.
Yes.
And a lot of people fell and died, and were
Yes.
just pulled away, just like a dead animal or something.
By By whom were they? All
By the capos, which
Yes.
were made the overseers from the prisoners.
Yes.
And they were put on little wagons, and this were taken later on to the crematorium. But while being there, we could see the chimneys, and at night time we could even see the flames
Yes.
going out of the chimney and the smell of burning flesh.
Yes.
There were no birds flying around there because they said because of the smoke and from the burning
And
flesh.
you knew, by then you knew what
By
it
then
was?
we knew already what's
Do you
the,
know how
what's
you
there.
found out? Were the
From the overseers, we knew that,
Who
you
were
know,
there before?
which they were serving there. They were called the Canada Commando.
Canada.
Because it was Canada, because Canada was considered a rich country in all this, and they were the people that were receiving the transports,
Yes.
and there were all the goods taken away from them, or their luggage.
Yes.
And among the luggage, they had valuables, jewelry, and all these things, and they managed food, and they managed some of them to take this away for themselves, although the Germans watched them, but some of them managed to do, and they were called the Canada Commando.
Yes.
And they knew where the people are going,
And
you know.
they had been there longer.
They have been longer, but in the end, they themselves, they only worked there for a short time, and later they took new people so that it won't be spread the news too much.
I see.
There was a revolt there, but it was also in Birkenau. There was a revolt from this.
During the time you were
I
there?
I don't know,
No.
but I heard of it this
Oh,
year.
I
I
see.
don't remember it myself.
No.
From-
There's just another thing. The capos.
Yes.
How did they behave?
Very bad.
They were Jews.
They were Jews. But look, I want to put this on record.
Yes.
If they would have come up to me and they would have said, I'm going to make you a couple, you get the better ration, you have enough food, and you better treated, I don't know if I wouldn't have done the same.
Yes.
When a human being is hungry, there is nothing worse. He'll do anything.
Yes.
I mean, we heard about cases of cannibalism, and this happened also in Buchenwald,
Yes.
where I was later.
Mm-hmm.
And
Were there any good couples? Any that
yes,
behaved better?
there were couples which they looked away. They
I see.
didn't see it. But
Yes.
some of them went out of their way to be. But some of the couples were from different nationalities, of course. And some of them took revenge on the poor Jew.
Not Jewish, you mean?
Not Jewish, yes.
Yes, yes. And I'm sorry, I have a few questions here that are important.
right.
If you don't mind, I'll just see. Yes, you were talking about the living conditions. You said the food was very poor.
Yeah.
You described the
That's right.
sleeping. What about any washing or toilet facilities?
The washing was only a row of taps. That's where the only thing. The toilet facilities was one great big opening with seats cut and with the big hole dug in. That's what it was.
And were you able to use that whenever you needed, or
At
at night, for instance?
Yes, because it was within, although the light shone on you right away if they saw somebody moving
Yes.
from the towers and see where you're going.
I see. And were you able to talk to the other prisoners? To
Yes,
each other?
inside we were able to talk.
And
yes.
during work?
During work, only if they didn't see us, you know.
And did you have any contact with non-Jewish prisoners?
Not in the camps where I was. That were more mainly Jewish people.
I see. And there were Germans, of course, the German
Yes,
SS,
yes, around.
And
Till we came from Birkenau, we came to Jaworzno, which was a coal mine,
yes.
which was also, this was already a camp with barbed wire and with watchtowers, which you could move out. There were attempts. A matter of fact, there was one big escape. There was a Russian in that camp where also Russian prisoners. There was a high-ranking officer.
Prisoners of war.
Prisoners of war.
Yes.
And they somehow managed to get him out through the wires. And they even left a note on the sphere that he escaped. And the 26 people escaped at this time.
The Russians.
The Russians. And
they got away, did they?
They got away.
Yes.
And
did the Germans make
the Germans, after the next day, they took out 26 people and they made a public hanging. And I still remember like now, they hung everybody, the 26 people.
Were they Russians also?
No, just picked out from the camp, anybody. Just anybody.
Just by chance?
Just by chance, just from the group. It could have been even me or somebody.
And did you have to stand and watch it?
Watch it, yes.
Yes.
Everybody had to
Stand and watch
it.
it. Yeah. Was that the last attempt, as far as you know, to escape?
To escape, I mean, yes, that was the last that I can make of any escape.
Yes.
That's the only escape that I can
That you know
remember.
of.
That I know of.
Were you able to mix with the Russian prisoners, or were you?
Yes, with the Russians. In that camp, we were able to mix with the Russian camp, and it was a bit of a relief in this camp, as personally myself. Although I worked very hard in Jaworzno, that is, with the in the coal mine, because in the coal mines we didn't have the Germans to watch over us, or observers,
Yes.
and to beat us while we were working. And
Who was supervising you?
the Poles, and it also they
Polish
were
prisoners, or?
no,
No.
Poles miners.
Oh, I
They were
see.
miners.
Yes.
They had to be
Oh,
expert.
Of course, yes.
We were doing the shoveling and all the dirty work and all the major. They were drilling in all
they knew what
they knew we were doing in building. And we were doing the loading on the wagons, the coals, by hand, not like mechanical today with shovels, by hand, by shovels
by hand, yes.
by hand.
Did you, how many hours a day, would you know how long you worked?
There were three shifts. I think there were 10 hours because there were 3 shifts, but by the time we moved and changed over, there were 3 shifts. And sometimes, if you were lucky to work with a kind Pole, he sneaked a piece of bread to you and things like
It
that.
happened occasionally.
It happened occasionally. And or a bit of soup. He gave it from his own lunch or something like that.
Did you have any break at all? Any lunch? Any food given to you during those working hours?
No, not at all. No, not at all.
Just 10
No,
hours
just
straight work.
right through.
Yeah.
And even from the camp, sometimes in this camp they ask some for people, for any professionals that are doing so, taken outside the camp to do any work for the Germans to clean up their barracks and things like that.
People who had professions.
Some cleaners or something.
I see.
So I came out and I said I'm a broom maker because I could make brooms from the birch trees.
Oh, yes.
So I made those brooms, and with those brooms we went out to clean. And in the German barracks we could find some leftovers, some bread.
Yes.
And once I remember it was a big feast, I found a big heap like from a parcel of bread which was mildewed. But this was a big feast for us. I took it home into the camp and washed the mildew off, and we were able to eat it.
Really? Now, when you had that job, you no longer worked in the mine?
No, this was for a short while.
Oh, I see.
But I went back to the
Back
mine.
to the mine. Was your brother-in-law working with you?
He was, yes, also in the camp, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this went
How many days a week did you work?
right through.
7 days?
Yeah,
Really?
right through.
This is probably a stupid question, but I'll just ask you. Were there any attempts at Jewish religious ceremonies?
No, not at all.
No.
We knew from the new transports, we knew when Yom Kippur was, and when Rosh Hashanah or something like that. I remember one day going to work for the night shift. We left in the afternoon, and we were giving a bowl of soup. So I knew it's Yom Kippur.
Oh, yes.
It was already late.
Yes.
I didn't eat it,
Really?
and I left it in the barracks on a rack somewhere. And I thought I'd come home next day, I'd be able to eat it. By the time I came home, somebody stole it, found it.
Yeah, all right. So you were there for
from
quite
there
a long time, yes?
Till 1940, January 1945, when the Russian front started to move. When the Russians started to move, we heard already in the news.
Yes.
And then they started to move us on foot all through Germany, into Germany. And that was called the Totenmarch.
The Death March, yes.
The Death March.
Yes.
And we stopped at Grossrosen, and they put us on trucks, and later on again to march to Weimar.
How
into
was the
Buchenwald.
March? What time? January, yes.
January,
Winter, yes.
winter time.
Yes.
And they put us on open wagons, like coal wagons, but they were open.
Yes.
And we were just lying there covered with the snow because we were traveling. We had no covering, nothing.
At all.
And a lot of people died on this frozen.
How long were you marching before you went on the wagon?
We were marching a long, long time.
Days.
Days.
Any food or drink at all?
We stopped. They stopped us in big farms, like big farmyards, and they asked the farmers to supply food to us, to give us. In one instance, I remember, was they let us in the yards, and there was a piggery, and they used to feed the piggery, the pigs, with the potatoes mixed with oats, and this. We ran into the piggery and grabbed by hand and shoveled it in our mouth, you know.
Yes. And did the farmers give you food?
They brought out breads and gave this little bit, just to see.
Were you able to share it, or did the first
No,
person grab
it wasn't a great big.
That wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough,
No.
and whoever went first, whoever
Got
got,
it.
and somebody didn't get anything.
Yeah. Were you in hundreds? You know, how many
Yes,
people
there
were
was hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Into thousands it goes this year. On that march, I vividly remember one incident. Walking along in the forest, there were ravines like from the road, and it was my teacher, Hebrew teacher, that we managed to be still together. He said, I can't give it up. My name was Lippmann, they called me Lippmann. And he said, I can't anymore. And he lay down, and whoever lay down or fell, they went and shot him.
Yeah.
And as I saw that, I was ready to do the same.
Same. Were you still with your Chaim? Was
Yes.
With you? Yes.
And walking along, being so in despair, we walked along through the fields, empty fields, frozen fields. It wasn't all covered in snow yet. I managed to see something glistening. And I found a gold ring that probably some woman peasant lost dropped
Yes.
during the work. I still remember it had a crack. That's maybe how she lost it. And it was a name and date written in it. Finding that gave me like
Hope.
a new hope.
Yes.
Like something, because this was like a treasure to have a piece of gold in those days. And that gave me courage to carry on.
Yes.
And then we walked into Buchenwald.
Wait a minute, you went...
From those, we managed to get
You went to the wagons?
to the wagon. I'm sorry, this was before the wagons.
Oh, I see.
This was on the way to Grossrosen.
Yes.
To Grossrosen.
Yes.
From the wagons, we went to Buchenwald, right into Weimar, and from there into Buchenwald.
In the wagon?
In the wagons.
Were you still able to walk?
Just this year. And they, on the way, by the way, I didn't mention, we were already liberated by the Russians in Blechhammer. That was on this march. And we broke open the storerooms and were able to get some food. And some people ran away from there
Yes.
into villages and right away. And somehow I and Chaim stayed on.
The group.
But unfortunately, the Germans came back. The front moved.
I
We
see.
could see the cannon fire going over us, our heads.
Yes.
And they moved it, and that's when they caught us again from Blechhammer.
Yes.
And they moved us into Grossrosen, and from then we went to Buchenwald
Still with the Germans.
with the Germans.
Yeah. How did the German population, now you talked about farmers seeing you, how did they respond to you?
A lot of them, I believe, although some of them didn't know what was actually going on. Because the places they chose were so isolated that they didn't know. In Auschwitz-Birkenau, the people could know, because they could see the
smoke.
chimneys and all the transports
Yeah,
coming.
sure.
The Poles for definitely
Yes.
knew. But in Germany itself, a lot of them, unless they were not connected with the army, or some came back from their holidays, for holidays from the war, could tell them what was going on, or maybe they didn't even tell them. Buchenwald was in the middle of great Thüringen Wald, great big forests,
Yes.
and nobody could know. But Buchenwald was known. This was like a politisch. This was already established before the war.
Yes.
In there, the conditions were much, much worse. And a lot of people died. Every morning they cleaned out
In
in Buchenwald. There was not such a thing like in Auschwitz that they poisoned the people, gassed them. There, the only people that died, they burned them in the crematoriums.
Yes, they died of
But they had
starvation.
also experimental
Yes.
things which they experimented on prisoners.
There's nothing left to experiment on.
No, they took out on the hearts and
Oh, I
things,
see.
and things like that.
Yes.
You know,
Do you
they
know
gave them.
Do you know that from your own... Did you know that
I
at the
saw
time?
the equipment after
After.
this At the time, I didn't know.
No. What sort of state were you in? Were you ill, or were you just
Very skinny, very this year. From there, I'm shortening because I could talk much more about this, about me, but I'm shortening this
talk
year.
About what's important.
Yeah. When it came to the end of April, already they could see 1945.
Yes.
When we came to Buchenwald, by the way, there were 71,000 prisoners there. By the time we were liberated, it was 21,000.
So 50,000.
50,000 they managed in 10 days to exterminate by moving them out in trucks and shooting them in the forest or a massacre or something, disposing of them.
Yes.
And
has that been verified somehow, these figures? I mean, you couldn't have known that at the time.
not at the time, but later it was verified.
Yes.
I have here a German magazine, from the cassette,
Oh, yes.
you've got it over there, which was published after the war. This is, you can point it out. This was just published by the American occupied forces, and this is mentioning the 5 major concentration camp. That was Buchenwald, where I was liberated. And from there we knew, I don't know if everybody knew, they said they're going to take us to other labor camps, move us into deeper Germany, move away from the Russians. And I said, I'm not moving from there anymore to Chaim. We were still managed all this year. Only somebody that survived can, in his mind, understand what it meant for 2 people to stay together after so many,
to go through it all.
to go through so many tribulations all this year, and to be able to stay together.
To support each other.
Yes. And in Buchenwald, I said to Chaim, I'm not moving from here. Anyhow, they caught me once. He was left in the camp, and they caught me on a truck. That's from the appeals that everybody had to come in the morning.
Yes.
And they put out these ones on the truck, and I was ready on the truck for the next day to be shifted out in the trucks.
Yes.
And they locked us up for the evening in a bathhouse.
Oh, yes.
And this was my first escape from real death. Was I escaped through a very tiny window. I wasn't very big at the time.
But you still had the strength
And
to
I
do that.
said, and I wanted to go back only because I wanted to be with Chaim.
Yes.
And that pulled me back to go back to him.
Did other people also get out the way you did?
A few of them also, but there was no reason for them so much. They didn't know where they're going. They said they're going to take them to other labor camps. The second escape was when they came in the barracks, and they just pulled out people from the beds go into trucks and to move them out. This was the last few days, the last 10 days before the liberation. And our barracks was on a very high, a lot of steps to walk up, because it was a bit on an incline. And he picked me out, and I was very weak, and I couldn't walk, and I said to him,
This is the SS man.
the SS man, I said, I'm sick, I can't walk, I'm dizzy. No, he said, you're not sick, du bist faul, you are lazy. And he kicked me in the back, and as he kicked me from top, I fell down all the stairs, and in front of the barrack was from the night was we carry out a heap of dead people. And I managed to fall into the heap of the dead people, and I stayed there. And he must have maybe moved away, or he thought I died. I collapsed. And as they moved away, I got up from there and I went back into the barracks. This wasn't the end yet. There was another appeal, and they took me out again.
But this was all in 1945?
1945.
Yes.
This was only in the last few months
yes.
before the liberation.
Yes.
Last 10, the 3 times that I escaped from certain deaths was in the last 10 days.
Yes.
When they picked us up from the appeal on the truck, so before coming to the main gate, they stopped. And of course, the German punctuality, everything had to be right. They said how many people, and they wrote it down, and they counted them. And before this fellow went out, the assessment went out from the truck to go into the office to put his papers down, I jumped off. I saw a broom standing near the wall on the inside.
Yes.
I jumped off the truck, I grabbed the broom and started to sweep. And he thought it's probably a cleaner or somebody, and the truck went through.
Goodness me.
And
you
that
had the
was
presence of mind to do that.
And that was till the 11th of
April.
when the Americans walked
When the
in.
Americans walked in.
The sad story of it is,
Do you want to have a break?
I was liberated with Chaim,
Yes.
and 19 days after the liberation he died in Buchenwald,
Yes.
and he was buried there in a mass grave. And not long ago, only a few years back, still when the wall was still up, I said to myself, I want to go.
The wall.
What year
The
was
Berlin
that?
Wall, yeah.
Berlin Wall. We went, my wife and I, we went back. I said I want to go back to Buchenwald. Also like to say, I want to walk in as a free man and walk out as a free man. And I took a plaque. And I lit a candle and said Kaddish.
You turn it off for a minute.
For Chaim.
So
After this-
he really, it was a lot to do with him that you survived.
Yeah.
He helped you to survive.
After that, I got very sick of myself, because it was also, today I can say, the fault of the Americans.
Oh.
When they liberated us, we were skin and bones,
Yes.
starving. They started to feed us with pea soup, and I still remember, like now, the fat speck. This is fat swimming on the top
Yes.
of the pea soup,
Yes.
and giving us pet food and chocolates.
Rich.
And it was too rich for us. A lot of them got dysentery,
Yes.
and from dysentery, typhoid, and I got very, very sick.
You got sick, yes.
And I was in hospital, and from there, sent me to another, like, recuperation hospital.
The
Americans. And from there, of course, started a new leaf of my story after the liberation,
Yes.
and going to different camps from one to another.
What sort of DP camps were they? Or?
Yes, the P camps. As I mentioned before, with that golden ring that I found, that I treasured so
And you were
much,
able to keep it.
I was able to keep it through Buchenwald.
Yes.
Although there was an examination before we went through a shower,
Yes.
they gave us a cake of soap
This
I,
is, when was this?
this coming in Buchenwald.
Coming in, yes.
Coming into
Yes.
Buchenwald.
Yes.
I took the ring off and put it in my mouth, and I held it under my tongue. And they examined everybody. They examined the back, the front, the eyes open, the mouth, and I could see what they're doing, and I
Yes.
thought they'll find it.
Yes.
So as I was holding the cake of soap in my hand, by the way, this was the soap, RIF was called, which was made from Jewish fat, from Jewish bodies,
Yes.
which was saying that this was made rein Eden fat. It was called RIF.
Yeah.
And I made myself nervous, like holding the soap. So the guard said, "What have you got there? You're hiding something." And he forgot about
The mouth.
opening my mouth. And I managed to go through with this ring. But unfortunately, in the DP camps, I went in one morning to wash myself, and I took the ring off. I left it on the wash basin. In 5 minutes, I came back, the ring was gone.
Dear.
I would have given anything today for that ring.
Yes. So you did, is it how did this work? Did the Americans move you to?
Yes, the American took over, and also the joint,
Oh,
the
yes.
American joint
Yes.
group came
Yes.
in, the Welfare
How long were you in
Society.
the sanatorium?
It was in the sanatorium at least 2 months. From then I went to Landsberg, and I started already to get contact with my father in
Oh, yes.
Australia.
Yes.
And through an American soldier, which went to the American field post, army post.
Oh, yes.
I gave him the address, and because we couldn't send it. There was no post, normal post.
No.
And he was able to send. And also he heard and as we came to the DP camps, everybody put down the names. And he already heard from my auntie that was in Israel that I survived, and that
Oh,
I
your
was,
father. Yeah,
yes,
yes.
that I was alive.
Yes.
Because she found my name.
I
on
see.
the, and my father and brother, they were desperately trying to find
Find
out.
you where you
And they
were.
still thought maybe somebody else will still survive,
Yes.
be able to find.
And how and when did you find out that nobody else, that your mother and sister
Oh, this we
perished?
knew very early.
After the
Very
war?
after. This we,
Sure.
not after the war. We already knew
After
early
you-
in
yes.
1940.
Of course, when you were in the camp. Yes.
40.
Yes.
We knew already when that friend went to town. We knew already.
Yeah, I forgot, I'm sorry.
And later, even how sometimes people can say, and a thing can become a reality. When I was with Chaim together, we were under such terrible condition, he said, "I don't care anything anymore about life. I know Riva, that was my sister's name.
Yes.
She's not alive anymore.
Mm.
And I really don't have anything to live for
for.
anymore.
Yes.
The only thing, and I have got no family, no relation anywhere, the only thing that I would have liked to see is the downfall of Germany and to be liberated."
Yes.
And that's
that
how
is
it
so,
was.
yes. And he probably made an effort to survive for you. You were younger and...
Yes, that kept, but if he would have
From both
survived, life goes on. Also all the traumas,
Yes.
which you believe, it's already, how many years now? Over 50 years.
Over 50, yeah.
I still have my dreams,
Nightmares.
nightmares. I wake up in a sweat.
Yes.
But the only thing that I've got such in me that I always stop before the gate of the guest chamber
In the dream.
In the dream, I wake up.
Yes.
I wake up myself.
Yes.
I see this frightful thing many hundreds of times. I was on my way
Yes.
where they opened the showers,
Yes.
where the guests came there, and I wake up.
This is in the dream.
In the dreams.
In reality, you didn't actually.
In reality, I never went so far.
No.
But in the dreams, in many, many, many hundreds and thousands of times,
you
I
wake
dreamed
up.
about
Yes,
it.
yes.
If I read the book, if I see a film or anything, I'm sure tonight after this interview,
Yeah,
I'll dream
I'm
about it.
sure, yes. Can you look at films? Do you look at films?
Yes,
Like Shaw?
I make an effort
Do you?
to look and to dig up
Yes.
more and more.
Yes.
I went back, I went through everything. I went back to Auschwitz, I went back to Birkenau, and to the places where I was, and to make,
Sorry.
and I want to put this on record, and I'm glad to have this
Yes,
interview.
yes.
Maybe in the future, people that like this David Irving came out and said that things didn't exist.
Yes.
For maybe later for historians and things, from people that lived in person.
Yes.
That's for the.
Have you spoken to have you told your family, your children about
Yes, I spoke. Not all of my children are quite. Matter of fact, in the beginning, I didn't want to. I didn't want to put them through the trauma
Yes.
that I was through,
Yes.
that I have been through.
Yes. Yes.
But in the later years, I started more to tell them. And also, this is quite a different story, is my wife that I married here in Australia
Yes.
in 1952. She survived the Warsaw Ghetto. That photo I managed to find here in Australia.
Your father had it.
My father had it.
Yes.
This is also at the same time a photo also taken.
Hold it steady. Hold it.
Right.
I'll fix it.
This is Chaim. This is the person we lived there in the house. This is Mr. Renzner, I still remember his name. That came from Zbonshin.
Yes.
That is me. This is Chaim's brother.
Yes.
And this is a small baby of Chaim's sister.
I see.
This one here.
Yes.
This is the wife of the teacher of Renzner, and she was a daughter of the Rabbi Shaman that I mentioned talked about in funeral. So, this is my sister and my mother.
Yes. And these photos you were able to send to Switzerland?
These photos we sent through mail
Yes.
to Sweden, and
This was
the cousin
early in the war.
early in the war,
Yes.
in 1940. The cousin in Sweden, it's a shame I didn't bring the letters. I still got the letters that my mother and sister wrote
Yes.
to Sweden, and the letters came to Sweden. This is a picture of my mother early in her, when she, I think it was when she got married. This is
Your sister?
my sister.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
She was a beautiful, gorgeous girl.
Beautiful. Lovely.
We
How
were
much older was she?
we were four
Brother.
brothers. Mother was busy in the shop all the time. She took care
Of you.
of the whole family
Yes.
and ran the house almost.
Gorgeous. How much older was she than you?
She was 6 years older.
Mm.
She
Yes.
was about 21, 22 at this time.
Mm. Beautiful.
This is my late father, which came here to Australia,
Yes.
and a lot of people here in Australia remember him as
Yeah.
Dad. The way this photo is,
Mm.
he died in 1970. Oh gosh, I don't want to mistake.
In the 1970s. He
70.
lived to a good
1970,
age.
good age, yes.
Yes.
And he was the president of the Caulfield Hebrew congregation.
I see.
He was the president for 8 years.
I see. Mm.
Yeah.
And many people would know him. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry I can't remember just the date, but
That's all right. That's all right.
I'm too emotional.
Of course.
This is a photo of my wife's mother. This is a story by itself also.
I think we'll try and get that from your wife maybe.
But I just want to finish off with this for me. My uncle that survived in Poland, he was in Russia,
Oh yes.
he got in contact with my father here in Australia. My father sent papers for him
After the war.
after the war. And he also said, you know, the Mrs. Plotska that she used to be Skowron from our town.
Oh yes.
Matter of fact, she was born in our town, Zagorov.
Yes.
She survived with her daughter.
Uh-huh.
And seeing that she lost her husband and all the family, and we know already that my mother is not with us anymore, maybe it would be an idea for them to bring them out.
Mm.
And maybe if you like each other, maybe you'll marry her. And so it was.
Really?
He married Mrs. Plotska.
Oh, your father married Mrs.
My father married Mrs. Plotska,
I see.
and I married her daughter.
Lovely. That's a
So-
nice story. Can you tell us just a bit more about your life in Australia? What did you do?
My life in Australia, I was from the lucky ones that I said before, that I had a family where to come, a
Yes.
roof over my head, I
Yes.
didn't have to worry about.
No.
In a place where to work, they were already established here, they had a factory,
Your
clothing
father and
clothing factory, my
Mm.
father and brothers.
Yes.
And we worked together, and I went straight away to work.
Mm.
It took me some time to become a normal human being after all this.
Yes.
But I am a character, I can say for myself that I look a lot on the brighter side of life
That's good.
and not to dig too much back in the past, although I'll never forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And not to cry too much about the past, but try to build new. I am a supporter of Israel. I see a lot of future. That is the only future for the Jewish
Yes.
people
Yes.
to
Yes.
survive.
Yes. Do you have, how many children do you have?
We have 2 daughters and a son.
And grandchildren?
And from the son is the youngest one. From him we have 3 grandchildren, and they're lovely. Yes, any grandfather will say.
Yes, yes. Well, that sort of shows us that Hitler didn't entirely succeed, did he?
No,
No,
it although believe me that a day doesn't pass that I don't think about it, and that I, first of all, I won't say that I'm 100% Orthodox, far from it, but I was brought up as an Orthodox, in an Orthodox family,
Yes.
and I keep a lot. There is kosher and all that at home. And I daven every day. And when I put on the film in the morning, this is another reminder
Yes.
for me when I put on
The number.
the number.
Yes. So you haven't.
So
There's no way
there is no way,
of getting
and as I mentioned, I was interviewed by Neil Mitchell.
Oh yes, tell us about that. That wasn't on the
No.
interview, so please tell us about it briefly.
Not so long ago, David Irving came with a statement, and he was on Jana Wendt's program
Yes.
to say that all this was invented. It was all made, and all the films that you see is by American
Propaganda yeah.
American film distributions and all that thing, and that those things didn't exist. So I rang up the next morning to Neil Mitchell, and he gave me quite a lot of time, and I said to him that I am a witness, I myself that I have been there, and how is it possible that in these modern days that there are so many documentations being done, and so many evidence, how can he still come out today and to say that this never existed?
Yes, yes, yes. So this is, I guess, why you came to give
That
this
is
interview
also
now.
one of the reasons I am willing all this, my interview and all my evidence to be used for any purpose, whatever, and I am on call anytime when somebody wants to call me and to interview me and to ask, I'm willing to cooperate.
That's very good. Just, I think, one more question. How do you think your experiences have affected your children?
It is, I think it might have affected my two daughters emotionally and with the way looking out to life, which is not one went through in her years herself. I don't want to bring this up, quite the big trauma, being sick, which she was on the verge of, on the death this year. But luckily, we're very lucky she survived. She had leukemia. And she lives like for today. She doesn't worry too much what tomorrow will bring. And also from the other daughter, also very capable person and clever. And sometimes comes up the questions, how could all this happen?
Yes.
Is there a God? Is there not a God? Which I don't want to go into too much of this. Being brought up in a religious household and things like that. My quick answer for that is the only, like sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Maybe it's a terrible thing to say, maybe a lot of people will criticize me for saying it. Maybe this was the sacrifice that had to be brought, so many millions for an Israel today to be there.
A lot of sacrifices, isn't it?
It is a lot of sacrifices to bring. But down the history, if you read from all this, what the Jewish people went through from the beginning, so many millions died over the centuries.
Sure.
So maybe in the next 1,000 years, this will look as a small sacrifice. Let's hope that Israel will still be there.
Yes. Thank you very much indeed. It was a very well told story, very moving, and we're very grateful to you for having spoken to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm